Coming up on Network Africa. United Nations aid workers warn that emergency relief supplies are running out in the Ethiopian region of Tigray. Special representative of the UN Secretary General in Somalia expresses concern about the humanitarian situation as the country prepares for parliamentary and presidential elections. Plus, confusion in Kenya as Director of Criminal Investigations says he won't revisit concluded investigations into 2007 to 2008 election killings. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin with the ongoing conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region. The United Nations aid workers are warning that emergency relief supplies are running out in the Ethiopian region of Tigray after weeks of fighting there. Spokesperson for the UN Humanitarian Affairs Agency, Saviano Abrehu, says this is mainly because it had been blocked from sending staff or supplies. He is calling for freedom of movement to be restored for aid workers as well as for civilians fleeing the conflict. The UN Refugee Agency says the number of people who've crossed into Sudan has climbed to 40,000. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council is due to hold its first meeting later to discuss the fighting in Tigray. In the meantime, the Ethiopian government is still insisting that residents in Tigray's capital, Mekelle, should leave the city or work with the government to defeat opposition forces. Government spokesperson in Addis Ababa, Radwan Hussein, says time is running out ahead of a deadline for Tigray People's Liberation Front troops who control the region to surrender by Wednesday. However, the leader of the region, which has been fighting national forces for nearly 3 weeks, said its people would rather die than give up fighting. In the meantime, the United Nations human rights chief is voicing alarm on reports of a heavy buildup of tanks and artillery around the Tigrayan regional capital of Mekelle.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, is concerned that the threat of major hostilities in Mekelle seriously imperils civilian lives. The High Commissioner has urged all parties to the conflict in Tigray to give clear, unambiguous orders to their forces to take constant care to spare and to protect the civilian population from the effects of the hostilities. The highly aggressive rhetoric on both sides regarding the fight for Mekelle is dangerously provocative, and it risks placing already vulnerable and frightened civilians in grave danger. The High Commissioner fears that such rhetoric will lead to further violations of international humanitarian law. The High Commissioner expresses alarm at reports of a heavy buildup of tanks and artillery around Mekelle, which is the capital city of Tigray province, following the government's issuance of a 72-hour ultimatum. Such rhetoric suggests possible breaches of the cardinal principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution in the conduct of hostilities that are designed to ensure the civilian population is protected.
Joining us now is Simon Marks, the VOA's correspondent in Ethiopia, to bring us up to speed on the situation there. Hello, Simon. Thank you for joining us on Network Africa.
Hi there.
What's the situation concerning this crisis at the moment?
Well, both sides, both the regional government in Tigray and the Ethiopian government are still locked in a very intense fight. There's reports of clashes, shelling, and rockets being fired by both sides on a regular basis. The Ethiopian government claims to be nearing the regional capital of Mekelle. Yesterday, they told us they were within 50 kilometers of the capital. The Tigrayans simply deny that they're under threat, saying that the town isn't encircled, that it has a robust defensive position, and they claim heavy losses on the side of the Ethiopian government. But honestly, with access completely denied to conflict zones for journalists and independent observers, it's actually very, very difficult to understand both the extent of casualties to combatants and to civilians. And there's just huge worry out there about the scale and the devastation that this conflict is actually causing.
Yeah, it is really a worrying situation. But tell us more on the latest on the meeting of Prime Minister Abiy and the members of the AU envoys, especially as he has refused peace talks with the TPLF authorities and not granting the African Union access to Tigray.
Yeah, well, obviously, South Africa, hold the presidency of the African Union currently, and Cyril Ramaphosa has made a pretty concerted effort to get mediation discussions going between both sides. So far, Ethiopia has rebuffed those efforts. They've agreed to meet 3 African envoys, former presidents, but it seems only out of courtesy and with no real engagement there to actually, bring both sides together. The UN Security Council today were due to hold talks in Ethiopia. It's just broken a few minutes ago that those talks have been cancelled. And meanwhile, the AU appears fairly toothless at the current juncture due to Ethiopia's sort of staunch riposte of the efforts.
Well, with peace talks out of the way now, a 72-hour deadline by the government to TPLF is expiring on Wednesday. The army says it would encircle the city and attack it with artillery fire. How legal is this when the army is threatening to attack civilians who are trapped in the conflict? And this is getting more worrying, especially with, no peace talks on the table anymore.
Yeah, quite. Obviously, the federal army's official who talked about the prospect of using heavy artillery on the capital was fairly blunt in what he said. The government's emergency task force has since tried to back those comments and said, if any heavy artillery is going to be used, it would be targeted at specific locations in the regional capital where they think TPLF senior members are hiding. But clearly, Mekele is a dense city with 500,000 people, many of whom support the TPLF. So clearly, any military onslaught on this city is going to cause a lot of damage to the people who live there. And there's been calls from some various groups, including Amnesty International, obviously to de-escalate and protect civilians in this area. So come tomorrow or Thursday, whenever the Ethiopian army engages the next sort of phase of their plan, there's going to be a lot of fear about the consequences. And again, the transparency of the government with the conflict is extremely limited because there's just simply no access, both physically and in terms of communication, despite efforts from people to get up there.
All right, then, Simon, a lot to keep our eyes on there. We do hope this crisis, is resolved peacefully. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa once again, and do stay safe.
Thank you.
Moving on, in Liberia, the UNHCR has airlifted 95 tons of emergency supplies to the country's capital, Monrovia, to help take care of Ivorians fleeing Côte d'Ivoire. Clashes between opposition and pro-government supporters in Côte d'Ivoire's central and west central regions have left at least 85 people dead and hundreds injured. Over 15,000 people have fled to the neighboring Liberia, Ghana, Guinea and Togo. Chartered Boeing 747 cargo flight landed in Liberia's capital, carrying blankets, jerry cans, kitchen sets, plastic sheets and solar lamps for refugees fleeing violence in Côte d'Ivoire. The items from UNHCR's stockpile in Amman and worth over $300,000 and more. More aid is said to be on its way. A Liberian senatorial candidate in the upcoming polls is promising to free former President Charles Taylor from prison if he wins the election. Menpaike Dumoy hails from the central Bon County, where Taylor lived when he was a rebel leader in the 1990s. Dumoy says he wants Taylor released because the people want him back, as they see him as a true nationalist leader who stood up for all of the people. A UN-backed court convicted Taylor of war crimes over his support for rebels who committed atrocities in neighboring Sierra Leone during the 1991 to 2002 civil war. He's serving a 50-year prison sentence in a prison in the UK. Mr. Dumoy has put up billboards bearing photos of himself and Taylor in Baringa town, which was the headquarters of Taylor's National Patriotic Front of Liberia movement. As Somalia prepares for parliamentary and presidential elections, the special representative of the UN Secretary General, James Swan, is expressing concern about the humanitarian situation. Speaking to the UN Security Council, he says the country has been hard hit by the triple shock of COVID-19, flooding and locust infestation. Focusing on the electoral process, the UN official laments that an agreed model of voting falls short of the constitutional requirement for parliamentary elections based on the principle of universal suffrage.
The country has been hard hit by the triple shock of COVID-19, flooding and locust infestation. The national trends in COVID-19 cases are broadly favorable, but we must remain vigilant. I again commend Somali authorities for their rapid response to COVID-19's outbreak and thank Somali health workers who are on the front lines to defeat the pandemic. The agreed model of voting, regrettably, fell short of the constitutional requirement for direct universal suffrage election of parliament. Yet, the agreement reflected wide Somali political consensus and ownership. In addition to the support of the president and federal member state leaders, the indirect model was also endorsed by other key Somali stakeholders. In support of these Somali-led efforts, UNSOM plans to contribute to implementation of the electoral agreement within the scope of its mandate and in collaboration with UNDP, UNSOS, and international partners. We will also continue efforts toward universal suffrage elections in the future. To this end, we urge Somali leaders to prepare consensually a roadmap with clear timelines and benchmarks to ensure one-person, one-vote elections take place in 2024-25.
Now, there's some sort of confusion in Kenya over a statement made by the country's Director of Criminal Investigations, George Kinoti. In a fiery address on Monday, the country's top detective announced that he was going for those who committed atrocities during the post-election violence in 2007 to 2008 that claimed more than 1,100 lives and left 600,000 others internally displaced. However, after a night of political uproar and condemnation, the DCI on Tuesday issued a statement saying Kenyans were being misled by those he said took his statement out of context. This is after at least 118 people recorded statements with detectives at the DCI headquarters, among them 70 cases of homicide.
These cases are going to be taken to an international court. Our courts are very competent. Our prosecution is very competent. The entire criminal justice system, I can for sure tell you, it's for us to prepare the criminal justice system from our investigation to prosecution to court. I'm very sure they will stand with the tears and cries of the victims. We are absolutely driven to ensure as many as possible face the law, so that we send a communication that don't think it may be the way it was some other times which are past. Then, total, we have around 118 cases registered today.
When we return in just a moment, we'll be speaking to Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati for more on this story. Plus, a Nigerian skater in the UK, Tinuke Oyediran, breaks 2 new world records. We'll give more details after the break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Let's speak now to Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati to help us with more details on the confusion in Kenya, as Director of Criminal Investigations says he won't revisit concluded investigations into the 2007 to 2008 election killings. Hello, Cyrus. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Network Africa. Please help us understand more on this. What was the miscommunication here in the DCI's statement?
After the DCI, the Director of Criminal Investigation, issued the statement yesterday about the post-election violence cases which are likely to be revived, he has issued another one today saying it was a miscommunication because that's not what he meant. He says that there are new complaints coming from some of the victims who were involved in the 2007-2008 post-election violence because of political reasons. And these complaints say that these people are being threatened by locals because of their political stand. Mind you, the people being threatened are, in quotes, you can say, non-locals who settled in the area, affected area. That's Rift Valley region. That is near the western part of the country. So they are saying they are being threatened because the most natives who are living there they are Kalenjins, and these people, the ones are being threatened are Kikuyus. So that's why the DCI says that he was misunderstood. He says he's not reviving the old cases. He's just dealing with the new complaints of threats to violence by the so-called locals.
Well, there are at least 118 people recorded statements with detectives at the DCI headquarters. Does this mean they want the cases revisited?
No, the 118 new complaints are totally different from the 2007 and 2008 post-election violence incidents. They are saying these are new complaints. These are new issues that are emerging, that they are being threatened, that they will face the same violence they faced in 2007. So that's why they are saying these are fresh, completely probe that is coming up, separate from the ones which happened in 2007 and 8.
All right then, Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati, thank you so much for those clarifications. Meanwhile, Kenya's Shona community are stateless, meaning they struggle to access basic services and many miss out on education. But Nosizi Dube has defied the odds by being the first Shona young woman to be admitted to a Kenyan university. Take a look.
Nosizi Ruben Dube is going to university. Why that's remarkable is that she's the first young woman to do so from Kenya's Shona community. Numbering around 3,500, they are stateless. Without nationality, they struggle to access basic services.
It's like you are a ghost in the country that you are in. You don't exist. It has been a great and challenging journey for me to reach where I am at the university level.
According to the UN's refugee agency, an estimated 18,500 stateless people live in Kenya, of which the Shona are the second largest group. They arrived from the former Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, in the 1960s, but according to a UNHCR spokeswoman, most were unaware of a 2-year window to get citizenship after Kenya gained independence in 1963. Their children and grandchildren, unable to prove their parents' identities, have also been unable to get citizenship, meaning hundreds of children miss out on a state education even though they were born in Kenya. Nosizi's mother, Angeline Rurumai Mutenda, was not educated, but her children were not going to miss out.
wanted to go to school, but because we were poor, I couldn't. But I resolved that my children, especially Nosizi, must get an education.
After good exam results in primary and high school, Nosizi qualified and was admitted to the University of Nairobi to study economics. With the assistance of the UNHCR, the university made an exception and she was allowed to register without any identity card.
She really inspires me so much because as a person, the kind of challenges that she has gone through raising us with the stateless status and the low living standards, the poverty status, she's really a person who if she wants to do something, nothing can stop her.
Nosizi says she hopes one day to be legally recognized as a citizen, and there is hope for Shona in 2019. The Kenyan government issued Shona children with birth certificates, a vital step towards ending statelessness.
Well done to her. Now, circus performer and skating teacher Tinuke Oyedinron has been celebrated across the world for her stellar achievement while standing on 4 wheels. During the recent Guinness World Records Day, an annual celebration of record breaking, the professional skater broke 2 new records. Our London correspondent, Juliana Olainka, got the chance to meet with her earlier this week.
Tinuke Oyedinron, more commonly known as Tinuke's Orbit to her 12,500 social media followers, is a skating sensation who has just twirled her way into the Guinness World Records. The former circus performer's skills are so rare, she managed to bag not 1, but 2 of the famed accolades.
I did 2 Guinness World Records in one day. The first one was for as many cartwheels as I could do on roller skates in 1 minute, and the second one was as many spins on e-skates as I could do in 1 minute. I got 30 on the cartwheels and 70 on the spins.
For many of us, you go to one roller skating party when you're a child, you put the skates down, never to be seen again. How did it become a profession for you?
Yeah, so basically I started off as a dancer, a trained dancer, and then I went into a show called Starlight Express where they taught me how to roller skate. It was a very glitz, glam musical, and I did that for 2 years and skated literally every single day for 2 years. When I came back to London, I started up my own company teaching people how to roller skate, and performing literally worldwide at the moment. It's just amazing.
Fast forward to 2020 and she says that achieving both of these records has made her lockdown dreams a reality.
I've actually been teaching roller skating and stuff like that in lockdown as well, online, which has been amazing, and I've managed to be teaching people all over the world rather than just in London, and that has been such a blessing. I've seen people progress in my classes in Italy, literally as far as America as well. So I'm really excited to get some more classes started up in January. Please do have a look on my channel. It's Tinuke's _orbit. You can find me on Instagram, and I'm going to be starting up a whole bunch of classes on there and teaching the world how to roller skate and just expressing that love and that joy.
Juliana Olayinka, reporting for Channels Television News in London.
Really, really amazing stuff. Well done to her. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shuboale.